Ryan is parked outside a coffee shop he doesn't even want to go into. It's 6:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. His wife is home. Dinner is probably ready. There's nothing wrong, no fight, no crisis, no reason to be sitting here watching strangers walk by with their dogs and their groceries and their uncomplicated evenings. But he can't make himself move. And the feeling he's sitting with, the one he can't name, can't explain, and definitely can't say out loud to another living human being, has been showing up more and more lately, a quiet pressure behind the chest, a strange grief with no obvious source, a thought that flickers through his mind before he can stop it. How did I get here? And is there a version of my life that felt more like mine? His marriage isn't falling apart. His wife isn't a villain in this story. On paper, everything looks like success. But something is off in a way that paper can't measure. And the silence around that feeling, the complete absence of anyone talking about it honestly, is making it worse. That's what we're unpacking today. This channel, Psyche Shift, exists for exactly this kind of conversation. The psychological undercurrents running beneath the surface of everyday life that most people sense but never examine. If you've been here before, you already know the energy. If you're new, welcome. Stay until the end because this one builds. The version of marriage. Nobody warned you about. You were sold something. Not maliciously, not by one specific person, but by 1,000 accumulated images, stories, songs, and cultural messages that all pointed in the same direction. Find the right person, commit, and life clicks into place. The searching ends. The restlessness fades. You've made it. And look, the early chapters of marriage can genuinely feel like that. There's something real in building a shared life with someone. Moving into your first place together, figuring out the small rhythms, who makes the coffee, how you navigate disagreements, what your weekends look like. There's meaning in all of it. But here's what nobody tells you. That meaning has to be actively maintained. It doesn't coast. It doesn't run on its own after the wedding. The feeling of arrival you get in year one is not a permanent installation. It's a preview. And for a lot of men, when that preview ends and the actual ongoing work of marriage begins, they realize they have almost no psychological framework for what they're supposed to do now. Think about this for a second. Before marriage, most men spend years chasing goals, chasing relationships, chasing a version of their life they can feel proud of. The chase has direction. It has momentum. It has a clear answer to the question, what am I doing right now? Marriage, if you're not careful, replaces the chase with maintenance. And maintenance doesn't give you that same forward-moving feeling. It asks something different from you. It asks for presence without novelty, commitment without constant reward, showing up even when showing up feels like disappearing. And some men aren't prepared for that shift, not because they're weak or shallow, but because nothing in their upbringing, their friendships, their cultural programming, or their relationship conversations actually prepared them for it. So the discomfort arrives. And without language for it, without anyone to talk to about it, it starts to calcify into something heavier, something that starts whispering the word regret. The 3 ways men quietly lose themselves. Here's where it gets real. Because the regret most men carry isn't about their wife as a person. It's about the gradual erosion of themselves as a person. And it happens through 3 specific patterns that almost nobody names clearly. The first one, the slow disappearance of the before version of yourself. Kevin used to run. Not competitively, just seriously. 3 times a week, an hour each time, earphones in, brain off, just his body and the road. He had a group of guys he played poker with monthly. He was writing something, a screenplay, nothing professional, just something that was his. He travelled solo once a year to somewhere that made him slightly uncomfortable in a good way. When he got married at 31, those things didn't get eliminated in one conversation. They dissolved slowly. The running became occasional. The poker night stopped fitting the schedule. The screenplay folder still exists on his laptop, but he hasn't opened it in 16 months. The solo trip hasn't happened since the honeymoon. And here's what's psychologically important about this. Each individual surrender felt like the right call in the moment. It felt like love, like flexibility, like being a good partner. The problem isn't any single decision. The problem is that there was no accounting. No one was tracking the cumulative cost of all those small retreats. Researchers who study identity and major life of transitions call this role engulfment, when one identity, like husband or father, expands so completely that it swallows the other identities that made you who you were. And when those other identities go quiet, a part of you goes quiet with them. The man Kevin is inside his marriage is only a fraction of the man he was before it, and on some level he knows that, and it gnaws. The second pattern, unspoken expectations meeting quiet reality. Every man walks into marriage carrying a mental model of what it will be like. Some of those expectations are conscious. We'll travel every year. We'll stay physically affectionate. She'll support my career ambitions. But most of them are completely unconscious, built from watching his parents, absorbing cultural narratives, and filling in gaps with his own hopes. The danger isn't that expectations exist. The danger is when they're never examined or articulated, to yourself or your partner. So when the physical intimacy becomes less frequent and he doesn't know how to bring it up without it turning into a loaded argument, he just carries that disappointment quietly. When his career ambitions don't get the enthusiasm he imagined, he absorbs that alone. When the friendship between them, the easy, laughing, genuinely enjoying each other's company friendship, starts to feel like it's been replaced by a business partnership of two people managing a household, he doesn't say it out loud, he just feels it, in the stomach, in the chest, in the parking lot at 6:47 on a Wednesday. And here's the thing about unspoken expectations. They don't disappear when you don't voice them. They transform into resentment. Slowly, without announcement. The thing you hoped for becomes the thing you mourn. And you're mourning something your partner doesn't even know existed. The third pattern, emotional isolation dressed up as strength. This one sits underneath everything else. Most men grew up learning, directly or through observation, that emotional complexity is something you handle internally. You don't burden people, you don't show uncertainty, you stay steady, you fix things. If you're struggling, you push through it, and pushing through it means not talking about it. Marriage doesn't automatically dismantle that conditioning. If anything, for some men it reinforces it, because now you're someone's partner, someone's provider, potentially someone's parent, and the weight of those roles adds another layer of pressure to remain visibly unbothered. So when the regret begins to surface, it has nowhere to go. He can't tell his wife, because she'll interpret it as an accusation or a threat to the marriage. He can't tell his friends, because most male friendships, especially after marriage, aren't built for that kind of vulnerability. He can't tell his family, because he doesn't want to alarm anyone or be told he's being selfish. The feeling goes underground. It becomes a low hum of disconnection. It shows up as him being checked out at dinner, being more irritable than he understands, throwing himself into work obsessively because at least there, effort produces visible results, or spending more and more time mentally somewhere else, not planning an escape exactly, but fantasizing about a version of life that feels looser, lighter, more like him. That's not a character flaw. That's a man carrying something too heavy in total silence. So what do you actually do with this? I'll break it down. But first we need to talk about why most men stay, and why that decision, when it's made for the wrong reasons, makes everything harder. The trap of staying silent and staying still. Here's something that sounds contradictory until you sit with it. The men experiencing the deepest marriage regret are often the ones who love their partners the most, because if you didn't care, the gap between what you hoped for and what you have wouldn't hurt. Indifference doesn't. Grieve. Only investment does. So these men stay. They stay because they genuinely love the woman they married. They stay because the thought of their children growing up in a split household physically hurts. They stay because they've built something real over years, and they know that dismantling it would wound people they care about deeply. And then there's this. The years themselves become a reason to stay. The psychological weight of "I've already put so much into this" works on the human brain in subtle, powerful ways. Behavioral economists call it the sunk cost fallacy, the tendency to continue something not because it's currently working, but because of what you've already invested. And while that concept usually gets applied to bad financial decisions, it's just as alive inside struggling marriages. The invested years start to feel like proof that leaving would mean those years meant nothing. Which isn't true, but the brain doesn't always traffic in truth when it's trying to protect you from pain. Here's what I want you to really absorb though. Staying in a marriage while quietly carrying unaddressed regret, without ever examining it, naming it, or working on it, isn't loyalty. It's a slow-moving kind of self-abandonment dressed in the clothes of sacrifice. And it doesn't protect your partner either. A man who's emotionally absent, chronically checked out, quietly resentful, that man is still causing damage. Just damage that's harder to see and harder to name. The people in his house feel it. Kids especially are extraordinarily sensitive to the emotional climate of a home. They may not be able to articulate what's wrong, but they feel the texture of the silence. They notice the absence of warmth between their parents. They absorb it. This isn't about blame. It's about cause and effect. The conversation that changes everything that almost never happens. Let me paint you a picture. Chris and his wife Natalie have been married for 7 years. He's been carrying this grey, flattened feeling for the past 2 of them. Not miserable, not blissful, just muted. Like someone turned the volume down on his whole life. He misses feeling genuinely excited to come home. He misses the version of Natalie who used to text him random things just because she thought he'd find them funny. He misses feeling like a man she was attracted to, not just a man she co-manages a household with. Natalie, meanwhile, and this part is the gut punch, is feeling something parallel. She misses feeling like Chris actually sees her. She misses feeling chosen, not just assumed. She misses the version of him who used to ask about her day and actually want to know the answer, not just check the box. 2 people, same household, same unmet longing. Both certain that bringing it up would either start a fire they don't have the tools to put out or confirm something too painful to hear. So neither of them says anything, and another month slides by, and the distance between them becomes so normal that they stop noticing it. The way you stop hearing a refrigerator hum after a while, even though it never actually stops. Relationship researchers who study long-term couples consistently find that emotional withdrawal is self-compounding. The more distance that builds, the harder it becomes to bridge, because the bridge itself starts to feel risky. Vulnerability requires a sense of safety, and safety erodes with every unspoken week. Here's the practical shift. The conversation doesn't have to start big. It doesn't have to be a sit-down intervention with prepared talking points. Start with one sentence that opens a door rather than blows up a wall. Not, "I've been having serious doubts about whether this marriage is working for me." Instead, "Somewhere along the way, I feel like we lost each other a little bit, and I want to find my way back to you." Same truth, completely different texture. One sounds like an exit strategy. The other sounds like an invitation, and you'd be surprised how often one honest, non-accusatory sentence unlocks a conversation that should have happened 18 months ago. The things that actually move the needle. Real talk now. What actually helps? Not surface-level fixes. Not date nights if the emotional foundation is cracked. Not couples retreats if the individual interior work hasn't started. The stuff that genuinely moves things forward tends to share a few qualities. The first thing is getting honest about what the regret is actually pointing at. Because most men who feel it haven't done that work. They feel the discomfort, but they haven't sat with it long enough to ask, what specifically is missing? Is it the loss of personal identity? Is it the gap between expected and actual intimacy? Is it that you feel like you stopped being seen as an individual and became a function? Is it something about your own path, your ambitions, your sense of purpose, that has nothing to do with your wife and everything to do with where you are in your own life? That distinction matters enormously, because some of what men experience as marriage regret is actually life regret that's being projected onto the marriage. Meaning, if you gave up on something important to yourself before the wedding, or if you made career decisions that hollowed you out, the marriage becomes the container for all of that pain, even if it's not the source of it. Second thing, and this is non-negotiable, reclaim something that belongs only to you. One thing. It doesn't need to be massive. The morning run, the instrument in the closet, the monthly catch-up with the friends who remember who you were at 24. Something that returns you to yourself even briefly. Because a man with no personal territory brings a depleted version of himself to every interaction, including the ones that matter most. There's good research on this. Couples where each individual maintains separate identity anchors and personal interests actually report higher relationship satisfaction than couples who merge completely. A degree of separateness isn't a threat to closeness, it sustains it. Third, and this takes real courage, find somewhere to say this out loud. A therapist who works with men specifically, a small group of men who have the emotional literacy to go past surface level, one friend who won't flinch or deflect. The act of speaking what's been silently accumulating does something neurologically. It converts an abstract emotional weight into something concrete that can actually be examined and worked with. The silence is part of what gives the regret its power. And fourth, if there's anything still worth fighting for in the marriage, fight for it with actual honesty, not just with renewed effort at performing normalcy. Effort without honesty is just a better decorated version of the same problem. Back to Ryan in the parking lot, let's say he eventually does go home. He sits down for dinner. He asks his wife how her day went. He half listens to the answer. He helps clear the table. He watches something on the couch next to her. He goes to bed. He does it again tomorrow. Or, let's say that night, something shifts. Not perfectly, not dramatically. But he looks at her across the table and says quietly, honestly, "I miss us. I don't know exactly what changed, but I miss who we were together. Can we talk about that?" That sentence is terrifying to say. It risks everything and nothing simultaneously. But it is the beginning of an actual life rather than a managed one. The regret you carry in silence doesn't stay still. It spreads into the way you show up for your kids, into the flatness of your daily energy, into the slow erosion of the person you were before you decided that needing things was too complicated to admit. You're allowed to need things. You're allowed to be a full human being inside your marriage, not just a reliable structure holding everything else up. The men who come out the other side of this, not with perfect marriages, but with real ones, did it by choosing honesty over comfort at the exact moment when comfort felt safer. That moment is available to you too. The question is whether you'll still be sitting in the parking lot next year, or whether you'll have walked through the door.